It didn't start with the slap. It started with quiet dinners where my father only asked Cole about his internship while I passed the salad in silence. It started with the mornings I spent ironing my blouse, choosing the safest shade of lipstick, only to hear him say, "Don't try to stand out if you have nothing worth saying." I didn't see it for what it was, not because I was blind, but because I believed if I stayed quiet long enough, worked hard enough, took up just the right amount of space, maybe one day he'd finally see me. But in the Jordan family, visibility came at a cost, and I couldn't afford it. My father, Martin Jordan, wasn't just a man, he was an institution in Boston. He could walk into a boardroom and silence it with a glance. His name was carved into real estate contracts, foundation plaques, courtroom wings. He was the kind of man people called Sir, even when he wasn't listening. My brother Cole was the mirror image he'd always wanted. Composed, calculated, careful. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. Power made room for him. And me, I was the one they introduced at events like an afterthought. "This is our youngest," said, with a polite smile and a grip on my elbow, just tight enough to remind me, "Don't speak out of turn." I learned how to disappear in plain sight, to lower my voice when he raised his, to fold my dreams small enough to fit into the corner of a dinner napkin. After my mother died when I was 11, the house turned cold. Not from grief, but from precision. Everything had to be spotless, structured, silent. There was no space for softness. My father obsessed over Cole's future, and when he glanced at me, it wasn't with curiosity. It was with calculation. What image do you project? What risk do you pose? I wasn't his daughter. I was his liability. But still, I tried. I got the grades. I smiled on cue. I studied pre-law even though I hated it. And when I finally got accepted into a top-tier law school, I thought for a moment, maybe this would make him proud. He glanced at the letter like it was trash. "You want to help people, write a check. Don't waste your life." So I declined the offer. Took a quiet job at a nonprofit instead, working with displaced teens. No press, no praise, just real work. And to him, that made me a failure. I didn't belong in the Jordan family's highlight reel. I was the scene they edited out. So when the gala invitation arrived, the Jordan Foundation's annual holiday event, I almost didn't go. But some part of me still wanted to show up. Not to impress him, not to win anything. Just to prove I could exist in his world without breaking something. I wore one of my mother's old dresses. Simple, black, safe. I curled my hair the way she used to and drove myself to the mansion. A house that had never felt like home. Inside, everything shimmered. Crystal chandeliers, waiters with silver trays, women with last names that sounded like trust funds. I stayed near the wall. I poured wine when servers were stretched. I smiled at people who didn't look back. And for a while, it worked. I listened to my father laugh across the room, booming rehearsed. I watched Cole nod beside him like a man rehearsing silence. And for one fragile moment, I thought I made it. I survived the night. Then my heel caught on the rug, and everything spilled. The wine, the illusion, and the lie that I had ever truly belonged. The glass tilted in my hand and the wine arced forward in slow motion, a deep red ribbon slicing through the air before splashing across the marble floor like a wound opening. I froze. So did the room. Time didn't stop, but it held its breath. I bent down without thinking, grabbing a napkin from a nearby table, hands trembling, trying to blot the stain before it spread. A waiter rushed over whispering, "It's fine, miss." But I barely heard him. Because that's when I felt it, a heat behind me, an electric silence. Then came the sound his footsteps, measured, sharp, final. I stood up slowly, too slowly. His hand was faster than thought. It cracked against my cheek like a gavel. Pain bloomed, sharp, shocking, but somehow not unfamiliar. I stumbled back, glass shattered beneath my heel. I tasted blood. My lip had split against my own teeth. The marble sparkled under the chandelier, and now it glittered with wine. And a drop of me. No one moved. Some faces were wide with shock, others narrowed in calculation as if trying to decide if reacting was worth the social cost. Then he spoke not like a father, but like a man delivering a boardroom verdict. Useless girl. Get out. I heard it more in the silence that followed than in the words themselves. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. It was practiced, icy, executed for effect. The crowd didn't gasp. They didn't protest. They absorbed the moment the way elite rooms always do with polished apathy. I turned slowly, deliberately. Across the room, Cole stood holding a drink, the same scotch Dad had handed him earlier with a proud hand on his shoulder. He met my eyes, then he looked away, not in shame, in calculation. I wasn't asking him to fight. I just wanted someone to care enough not to pretend it didn't happen. But he didn't even blink, and that silence, it cut deeper than the slap. I walked out. The ballroom lights shimmered behind me like nothing had happened. A glitch in the evening, a temporary error. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't run. I walked, deliberate, heel after heel on cold marble, each step echoing like a verdict only I could hear. Outside, the air hit like ice. My skin stung. But I welcomed the pain. At least it was honest. I drove home in silence. Blood dried on my lip hands clenched around the steering wheel. The snow fell like ash, soft, endless smothering. When I got inside, I didn't kick off my shoes right away. I stood in the dark hallway, light from the street lamps, catching the bruised edge of my cheek in the mirror. I looked like a stranger, and still my phone buzzed. Again and again. 53 missed calls. None asking if I was okay. None asking if I made it home. They weren't calls of concern. They were calls of control, of cleanup. That was the moment, not the slap, not the silence, but that moment right there, standing in my hallway, bruised and ignored, when I finally understood I had never been a daughter. I had been a liability to manage, a shadow to suppress, and I had nothing left to lose. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the sting in my cheek every time I moved. Not just from the slap, but from every moment before it that told me it was coming, long before his hand ever did. The hallway outside my bedroom still smelled faintly of wine and cold air. My heels sat where I'd kicked them off like two exhausted soldiers left behind. My phone kept buzzing. A voicemail broke through. Haley, my father's voice, measured, dismissive. Last night was unfortunate, but accidents happen. Let's not blow this out of proportion. You embarrassed yourself. Don't embarrass this family further. Unfortunate, not violent, not humiliating. To him, I hadn't been hurt. I'd been inconvenient. I played it again, trying to find a crack, any crack in his voice that sounded like regret. There wasn't one, only warning wrapped in diplomacy. Then came the text from Cole. We should talk. Maybe you misread the moment. Don't let emotions ruin what's left of what my dignity. My place in a family that never made space for me. I stood up, legs stiff from cold and rage. As I walked past my bookshelf, something caught my eye. A flash of faded green behind an old candle almost swallowed by dust. It was a notebook, spiral-bound, frayed edges, my high school journal. I hadn't touched it in years. My hands trembled as I opened it. I expected to find poems, maybe notes about a crush. But it wasn't that kind of journal. It was a record. A quiet archive of everything I hadn't allowed myself to say out loud. Dinner. He said I should wear less black, said I looked like I was mourning my own future. Cole got a Rolex. I got silence. Father told the guests I dropped out. I hadn't. Page after page, moment after moment, stacked like bricks around a truth I had spent years trying to forget. It wasn't in my head. It was real. And it had always been real. I flipped to the back. The last page was blank, still waiting, like it had been holding its breath. I grabbed a pen. At the top, I wrote, "The night he hit me." Then slowly, deliberately, I began to write where it happened, who was there, what he said, what Cole didn't. My handwriting was shaky, but my memory was sharp. Every detail I poured onto the page felt like proof, not just for the world, but for me. Because for so long I had shrunk myself to survive, made myself smaller, quieter, easier to manage. But now something had shifted. I didn't want to survive anymore. I wanted to be free. The next morning, the sky outside was a flat sheet of gray. Boston winter had that way of pressing down on you, like even the weather was trying to keep you quiet. I hadn't really slept, just floated in and out of memory, clutching the green notebook like a lifeline. My inbox had filled overnight. Emails from my father's PR team, from the estate, from someone named Dana I didn't even know. We're hoping this can be resolved quietly. Please refrain from making public statements. Do not involve outside parties. Containment. Not apology, not accountability. That's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't personal. It was procedural. The Jordans didn't fix wounds. They buried them. I slammed the laptop shut. My apartment felt like it was closing in. I needed to breathe, to think, to remember who I was before their silence became my second skin. So I grabbed my keys and I drove. Not to the office, not to the gym, but to a name I hadn't said aloud in over a decade. Laya, my father's younger sister, the woman he called reckless, emotional, embarrassing, the woman who vanished from family dinners the same year I turned 13. There were whispers that she'd refused to marry the man he picked, that she sold her inheritance and started a nonprofit in Vermont, that during one final screaming match, she told him, "Your kingdom is built on fear." She was the only adult who had ever stood up to him, and I needed someone like that now. Her name was still on the buzzer of a quiet brownstone near Davis Square, L. Jordan. My finger hovered, then pressed. A pause, then a voice. "Hello, it's Haley," I said. My voice cracked. I don't know if you..." The door buzzed open, no questions asked. Her apartment was warm, cluttered, real, books stacked sideways, photos of dogs, the smell of something herbal on the stove, and there she was, hair streaked with silver, eyes sharp as ever, standing in the light of the window like someone who had long since stopped apologizing for taking up space. "I've been waiting for you," she said, and just like that, I broke. I told her everything, the slap, the silence, the voicemails that felt more like threats than concern, the notebook, the ache in my chest that wouldn't settle. Laya didn't interrupt, didn't flinch. She just sat across from me, hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug, and listened like someone who'd been here before. When I finally stopped talking, she stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a thin folder. She opened it, pulled out a photo. Her younger, maybe my age. Standing on a courthouse step, arms crossed, chin, lifted a fire in her eyes. "Your father once hit me too," she said. Not with his hand, with his words, over and over, until I started to believe them. I stared at her. "What did you do?" She smiled, a small, almost sad thing. I left. Then I built a life so solid he couldn't shake it even with a single word. That night, she offered me her guest room, a small twin bed, a crooked bookshelf, a view of a narrow alley below. It was the first place I'd felt safe in days. She didn't ask me to explain myself again. She just handed me a blanket and said, "Tomorrow we start." And we did. We started with coffee and a printer that jammed every third page. Laya pulled boxes out from under her bed, labeled in Sharpie, faded with time Jordan. Legal. Inside were documents she'd saved, letters, emails, tax statements, all connected to the empire Martin Jordan had built and the quiet destruction he left behind. "He's done this before," she said, flipping through a yellowed memo. To me, to former employees, to a business partner who settled quietly before trial. She looked at me. "You think that slap was personal?" It wasn't. It was part of a system. A new chill moved through me, Not fear, understanding, the kind that anchors you. My phone buzzed again, now up to 97 missed calls. The latest text was short, final warning. Let this go, or face the consequences. MJ MJ. Not Martin, not Dad. Just initials like a brand, a corporation, a threat. It didn't scare me anymore. It just confirmed what I already knew. He'd never seen me as a daughter, only a variable, a risk. Laya tapped the green notebook with her pen. That's your core, she said. Now we build around it. So we did. We listed the gala, the fundraiser where he told the press I was between jobs, the Christmas where Cole got a new car and I got a hollow speech. Your presence is enough. Be grateful. I played the voicemail. We recorded it, backed it up, encrypted it. Then Laya taught me how to pull public records, how to trace financial filings, how to look for what people hide when they're afraid of losing everything. She slid her laptop toward me. You should see this. It was a spreadsheet real estate transfers. One row caught my eye. A beachfront property in Cape Ann suddenly moved into an offshore trust, dated 3 days after the gala. A panic move. Asset shielding. He's hiding things, I whispered. Laya nodded. He's scared. They always are, but only when they realize you're not a little girl anymore. That night, I stood in the hallway outside the guest room, staring at a photo of Laya from her 20s. Red curls like mine, jaw tense, eyes like fire. She had left, built her own name, without apology, without inheritance. I looked at my own reflection in the hallway mirror, bruised, tired, but standing. And I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity, control, truth. So I picked up my phone, typed a message to an old professor of mine, a journalism mentor, someone I admired back when I still believed I'd be allowed to have a voice. What do you know about publishing a truth they don't want told? I stared at it for a second, then hit send. The next morning, the message came from Cole. Subject line, let's talk. No greeting, no warmth, just a suggestion to meet him or father me. No lawyers, no press, just family, as if that word still meant something. Laya read the email over my shoulder. Go, she said. Not for them, for you. Go see what they really are when they're no longer pretending. We chose a neutral space, a private room in a downtown law office, fluorescent lights, 4 chairs, no audience, no chandelier to shimmer over their cruelty this time. I arrived first. Cole walked in next, still dressed like perfection navy coat tailored slacks, the polished face of the family brand. He gave me a tight nod, eyes not quite meeting mine. Then came Martin Jordan. My father, gray suit, straight spine, followed by his assistant who handed him a folder and disappeared. He sat across from me like he was settling into a throne. His first words, "You look tired." Not hello, not sorry. Just a warning in the shape of an observation. Cole cleared his throat. We're here to make this right. Martin leaned forward. You made a mistake. That's forgivable. But what you're doing now, digging into financials involving Laya, that's reckless. I didn't blink. So is slapping your daughter in front of 100 people. He flinched. Just for a second. It was a moment of frustration. His voice was lower now, measured. The voice he used when negotiating large contracts. You called me useless, I said. You humiliated me. You embarrassed me, Haley. There it was. The truth finally naked. It wasn't about what he did. It was about how it made him look. Cole tried to step in. Haley, no one's saying it was okay, but there's a way to handle this without blowing it all up. I turned to him. There's no clean way to cover up abuse, Cole. Then Martin slid the folder across the table. This is a non-disclosure agreement. Sign it and we move on. You'll get a settlement. Quietly. With dignity. That word again. Dignity. As if it was something he could buy back for me. I'm not signing anything I said, and I'm not staying silent. His jaw tightened. His voice lowered another octave. If you go through with this, we'll respond. Legal action. Character witnesses. Proof of your instability. Cole looked away, uncomfortable, silent. "Would you let him hit your wife?" I asked. He flinched. "Your daughter." No answer. Only more silence. Then why is it different with me? Still nothing. I looked back at my father. "You stood there and watched me bleed. And now you want me to protect the man who did it?" Martin's voice sharpened. "Your behavior has always been emotional, dramatic. Laya taught you that." He turned to Cole. "She's not thinking clearly." Cole nodded faintly. The puppet still performing. I stood up. "No, this rebellion of mine, it begins now." Martin stood too, his voice rising for the first time. "You are nothing without this family. You think Laya can protect you. You'll come back. You always do." I looked him dead in the eye. "You don't know me at all, and that's the only reason you thought I'd stay quiet." I walked out. No slamming doors. No last word. The silence behind me was louder than anything I could have shouted. Outside, the sky was a cold slab of gray. The air bit at my skin, but this time it didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. I didn't go home. I went back to Laya's. When I walked through the door, she looked up from her laptop and asked only one question: "Are you ready to burn it down?" I nodded, and we began. Everything we'd collected, the voicemail, the journal entries, the financial transfers, we sorted them, time-stamped them, backed them up on 3 encrypted drives. Leia handled the logistics. I handled the voice, the part no spreadsheet could express. The cost of being invisible for too long, the weight of being the daughter no one claimed unless it was for show. That night, I didn't cry. I wrote, not for vengeance, for truth. We didn't break the silence. We weaponized it. Laya and I had everything: the recordings, the real estate transfers, the timeline of public incidents cross-referenced with journal entries, names, dates, bank statements, but none of it mattered without the voice to thread it together. So I wrote and rewrote, then wrote again. Not just about the slap, but the years before it, the cold silences, the dinners where I was invisible, the birthdays where I got a lecture instead of a hug, the afternoons he walked into my room not to ask how I was, but to remind me who I owed. I wrote the truth, the kind that shattered legacies. We reached out to one of Laya's old journalist contacts, an investigative reporter from the Boston Standard. He wasn't just interested, he was ready. He verified everything: the trust transfer, the offshore documents. He even found witnesses, former employees, ex-partners, people who had stories they never thought would matter. We set the release date, Christmas Eve, the same night as the annual Jordan Foundation Gala. The irony was too perfect to ignore. The same room, the same stage, the same people. But this time, the power wouldn't be in their hands. I didn't have a ticket to the event. I didn't need one. The hotel lobby shimmered with holiday gold, glass doors, marble floors, wealth trying to imitate warmth. I walked in wearing a black coat and a quiet fire in my spine. No makeup to hide the bruise that hadn't fully faded. No apologies on my lips. Inside the ballroom, everything glittered. Waiters passed champagne. Laughs floated like bubbles through crystal. Martin stood at the podium, a king on his stage. "The Jordan Foundation is proud to serve Boston," he said. "We stand for dignity, for family values, for legacy." And right as the applause began, the phones started buzzing. 1, then 5, then dozens. People glanced at their screens, brows furrowed. Whispers began to ripple like wind across water. Breaking news: Jordan Empire under fire, exclusive allegations of abuse. Coercion and financial misconduct emerge, the Boston Standard. The article hit hard. Not just accusations, proof, screenshots, audio files, direct quotes, the voicemail, the journal excerpts, the timeline. It was undeniable, and it was mine. People started walking out. First a donor, then a board member, then a group of young interns whispering behind their hands. Martin's voice cracked mid-sentence. His assistant whispered something in his ear. His face went pale. Cole stood by the curtain, jaw-locked lips pressed tight. Martin snapped. This is a smear campaign. She's unstable, vindictive. This is not who we are. But the mics were still live, the cameras still rolling, and now the world saw the man behind the name. He fumbled, raised his voice. She's lying too late. The gala didn't end with applause. It ended with silence and flashing cameras, the perfect scene for the fall of a dynasty. I didn't wait for the fallout. I walked out before they could look for me in the crowd. I didn't need to see him crumble. He had already collapsed long before that night. He just didn't know it yet. Outside, the air was sharp. Snow fell in slow spirals. My phone buzzed again, but this time not with control. Messages. Dozens. Hundreds. Thank you for speaking. I thought I was the only one. You made me feel seen. For years, I had been afraid of my voice. Now it had become something bigger than me, something louder than their silence. Martin had spent his life building a world on fear, and I, the girl he once called useless, had torn it down with nothing but memory paper and the truth. I didn't go back to the Jordan estate, not to gloat, not to see what remained. What was left behind wasn't mine to mourn. 3 weeks later, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore. Exposed brick, old radiator that clanged at night, a window that fogged up every morning. No marble, no chandeliers, just the soft scent of old paper and the gentle shuffle of customers below. It was the first space I had ever chosen entirely for myself. I picked the furniture, painted one wall dark green, hung a print above the desk that simply read, "Truth doesn't need permission." It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Martin under federal investigation for financial misconduct. Sponsors pulled out. 2 board members resigned. A public statement was released. Polished, hollow, predictable. Cole. He went quiet. One email came. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I never responded. Laya visited every Sunday. She brought tea and books and stories that made me laugh until I remembered how to. Sometimes she didn't bring anything at all, just silence, the good kind, the kind that feels like breathing room. One morning, I found an envelope taped to my door, no return address. Inside was a piece of paper torn and angry. "You destroyed this family. Hope you're proud." I folded it in half, then dropped it in the trash. Because I wasn't proud, I was free. I started volunteering at a women's center downtown, helping survivors write their stories. Not for the courtroom, for themselves. We didn't talk about revenge. We talked about voice, about how healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from remembering safely. One woman asked me, "How did you know it was time to speak?" I smiled. When the silence started sounding more like his voice than mine, I still had the green notebook. It sat on my shelf between 2 worn books on resilience and narrative therapy. The first page still read, "The night he hit me." The last page had been blank, until now. That evening, I lit a candle, curled into the window seat, watched the Boston skyline blink through the winter fog. Then I picked up a pen and wrote, "Tonight is the first night I don't feel like I have to explain myself to anyone." I didn't cry. I didn't need to. I closed the notebook not to forget, but to move forward, because I wasn't his useless girl anymore. I never had been. CTA call to action. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice from people who tried to silence it? Drop your story in the comments. I'm listening. And if this story moved, you don't forget to like and subscribe. You never know who needs to hear the truth next. "You've always been the backup plan," my sister said, laughing like it was a joke. I was the one who watched her kids when she traveled, covered half the down payment on her house, even lied to our parents so she could move in with that guy. But when the family photo was taken at Grandma's birthday, they asked me to step aside just for the core family. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. I left before dessert was served. 2 days later, the HOA got an anonymous tip about her unregistered rental unit, and the fines hit fast.